My name is Margaret Turner. I am 78 years old, a retired bank manager who spent her entire life working hard, raising a family, and making sure my children and grandchildren never lacked anything. For decades, I believed love was returned with love, sacrifice with gratitude. But that illusion shattered the night they looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't part of the family anymore. It happened in my own living room. My son, Michael, stood tall with his wife, Jessica, clinging to his arm like a queen on her throne. My granddaughter, Emily, sat on the couch scrolling her phone, smirking every time she looked up at me. They had called me downstairs for what they described as an important family discussion. Instead, it turned into an ambush. Jessica crossed her arms and said, "Margaret, we've decided you should move out. You've lived here long enough. This is our house now." I felt my heart clench, but I kept my voice calm. "Our house?" Yes. Michael refused to meet my eyes. "Mom, we've been paying the bills. You're just here. We need space. You should find somewhere else to stay." They thought that would break me. They thought I would beg. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but because I knew something they didn't. Quietly, I walked back upstairs, ignoring Jessica's snide comment about old people being so dramatic. They thought they had the upper hand, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. I was still the primary signatory and trustee on every single account they lived off. That night, while they celebrated downstairs, I opened my laptop. The screen's glow lit up my tear-streaked face as I logged into the online banking system I had managed for decades. Account after account appeared on the screen: savings, checking, investments, all tied to the family trust that I had set up. With every click, my hands trembled, not with fear, but with a mixture of pain and power. I hovered over the Close Account button, my heart pounding. Then, with one final breath, I pressed it. The screen confirmed. Account closed. Funds withdrawn. At that moment, I realized I wasn't the weak, unwanted old woman they believed me to be. I was still Margaret Turner, the woman who built this family from nothing. They didn't know I had transferred everything into a private account they had no access to. Tomorrow, when they wake up to find themselves penniless, they will understand what it means to underestimate me. As I closed my laptop, a quiet knock came at my bedroom door. It was Emily. She stood there, phone still in her hand, eyes wide with suspicion. "Grandma," she said softly, "what are you smiling about?" I turned to her and whispered, "You'll find out in the morning, dear." But what Emily said next froze me in my tracks and made my blood run cold. "Dad said if you don't leave by tomorrow, they'll make sure you can't ever come back here again." The night wasn't over. And neither was I. Stay tuned, because what happened the next morning will shock you even more than this. If this story has your heart racing already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The best is yet to come. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter downstairs. The kind of laughter that makes your stomach turn because you know it's at your expense. I took my time getting dressed, brushing my hair back into a neat bun, and putting on my blue cardigan, the one my late husband used to love. As I walked down the stairs, the voices became clearer. Jessica was on the phone, speaking loudly. "Yes, she's leaving today. We'll finally have the house to ourselves. No more old lady drama." Michael chuckled, sipping his coffee like a king in his castle. Emily sat there, legs crossed, scrolling through social media as usual. Not one of them looked at me when I reached the bottom step. I stood silently until Jessica noticed me. Her smile was venomous. "Oh, Margaret, you're up. Don't worry, we've already started packing some of your things. We thought we'd save you the trouble." My heart sank, but I didn't let it show. I simply replied, "How kind of you." Michael avoided my eyes again. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We'll find you a small apartment somewhere. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." Those words echoed in my head. After all I had done for them, this was how they spoke to me. They had no idea I had already pulled the rug out from under them. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from them at the table, taking my time. Jessica rolled her eyes. You don't seem too upset about this. I smiled faintly and sipped my tea. Oh, Jessica, I'm just full of surprises. Her face twisted in annoyance, but before she could say another word, Michael's phone buzzed. He picked it up, and I saw his face drain of color. What? That's impossible, he yelled into the phone. Jessica grabbed the phone from him, listening, and her jaw dropped. What do you mean all the accounts are closed? What do you mean there's no money? The room fell silent. I placed my teacup down and looked them straight in the eye. You see, I said calmly, you forgot something. That money you lived on. That wasn't yours. 'Twas mine. You may have told me I'm not family anymore, but you forgot who kept this family alive in the first place. Jessica's face turned red with fury. You can't do that, she stammered. Oh, my dear, I said softly. I already did. Michael slammed his fist on the table. You've ruined us, Mom. How could you? I stood up slowly, towering over them with the quiet dignity they thought they had taken from me. You asked me to leave, I said. So I will. But not before taking back what's mine. Emily finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered, Dad, what do we do now? Michael's voice trembled. We need to fix this. We need to stop her. They didn't know it yet, but I was just getting started. As I walked to the door with my suitcase, Jessica shouted after me, You'll regret this. I turned my head slightly and replied, No, darling, you will. I stepped outside, feeling the morning sun on my face. My car, which they thought they had taken from me, waited in the driveway, because they didn't know it was registered solely in my name. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. Just as I was about to pull out, a black SUV rolled up behind me, blocking my exit. Two men stepped out wearing dark suits. They approached my car, and one of them tapped on my window. Mrs. Turner, the taller one said. We need to talk about your accounts. Who were they? Why were they here? And what did they want with me? You don't want to miss what happens next. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because next chapter will leave you breathless. The tap on my window sent a shiver down my spine. I rolled it down slowly, meeting the cold eyes of the tall man standing outside. He had the look of someone who was used to getting answers quickly, dressed in a sharp suit with an expression that revealed nothing. The other man stayed slightly behind him, scanning the area like a bodyguard. Yes, asked, keeping my voice steady. Mrs. Turner, he repeated. My name is Mr. Harris. This is my associate, Mr. Cole. We represent the private bank where the trust funds were managed. There have been some unusual transactions on your accounts in the last 12 hours. We need to confirm a few details. Jessica's voice screeched from the doorway. Don't talk to her. She's crazy. She stole our money. I turned to glare at her. Your money, I said, letting the venom drip from my tone. You mean the funds I legally own? The men exchanged glances, obviously picking up on the tension. Mr. Harris leaned closer to my window. Mrs. Turner, would you be willing to step out and speak with us privately? It's in your best interest. I hesitated, scanning their faces. Something about their demeanor didn't scream bankers. They were too stern, too guarded. But I nodded slowly and stepped out, closing the door behind me. I crossed my arms as they led me a few steps away from the house, out of earshot from Jessica and Michael, who were now yelling at each other in panic. What's this about? Asked. Mr. Harris pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen, showing me the details of my transactions. Last night, multiple accounts tied to your family trust were closed, and all assets were transferred to a private offshore account. The system flagged this because it was a large, sudden movement. We're here to confirm that these actions were authorized by you. Yes, I said without hesitation. They were. The men looked at each other, as if confirming something. Very well, Mr. Harris said. But there's something else you need to know. The trust had pending liens placed by creditors. Apparently your son and daughter-in-law took out loans using the trust as collateral. By closing the accounts, you've triggered a chain reaction. The creditors are now coming after them directly. And they're desperate. My lips curled into a smile I didn't bother to hide. That's their problem, not mine. The shorter man, Mr. Cole, cleared his throat. Be careful, Mrs. Turner. People who lose everything tend to do desperate things. If I were you, I'd stay away from them for now. I nodded, my heart pounding. Thank you for the warning. As they got back into their SUV and drove away, I glanced back at the house. Jessica was still standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her face pale with fury. Michael had disappeared inside. I knew they were plotting something. But what they didn't know was that I had planned for this moment years ago. I walked back to my car, determination burning in my chest. Driving away from that house felt like shedding a layer of pain. The sun was high in the sky, but my thoughts were dark. Where would I go now? I had options. Oh, so many options. I owned a small cottage by the lake, one that no one in the family knew about. My late husband and I had bought it as a secret getaway, and I had kept it just as it was, fully paid for, untouched by the family drama. That's where I would go. When I arrived, memories flooded back. The laughter of summer days, the smell of wildflowers, the quiet nights by the fire. I stepped inside and inhaled deeply. This was my sanctuary. I unpacked my suitcase, brewed a pot of tea, and for the first time in years I felt peace. But peace didn't last long. My phone rang, shattering the silence. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. A cold voice hissed on the other end. You think you're smart, old woman? You think you can just take everything from us and walk away? Watch your back. The line went dead. My hands trembled slightly as I placed the phone down. Jessica. Had to be her. I knew she wasn't bluffing. She was vicious enough to do something reckless. That night, as I sat by the fireplace sipping tea, I heard a noise outside. A step. Slow, deliberate. My heart raced. I got up quietly and peeked through the curtains. A shadow moved by the edge of the trees. My stomach dropped. Suddenly, a rock smashed through the window, landing near my feet. Attached to it was a note. I picked it up, my hands shaking. The message was scrawled in angry handwriting. Leave the money or we'll make you disappear. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had faced worse in my life, and I wasn't about to let them win now. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the shadows were gone. They searched the area, found nothing, and advised me to be cautious. Cautious wasn't enough. I needed to fight back, not with violence but with the kind of power they had underestimated all along. I opened my laptop and began drafting a legal notice. If they thought they could threaten me into submission, they were about to face a storm they couldn't control. The next morning I sent the notice to my lawyer. Within hours, documents were filed to revoke their access to any remaining assets, remove their rights to the trust, and start proceedings to evict them from the very house they thought they owned. But just as I hit send, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message with a picture. My cottage. Taken from outside. Someone was watching me. I froze, realizing they had found me. And then came the chilling text. You can't hide forever, Margaret. I knew what I had to do next, but it would require every ounce of strength I had left. They wanted war. I would give them one on my terms. What I did the following night changed everything, and it's something they never saw coming. Stay tuned, because in the next chapter, the tables turn in a way that will leave you stunned. If this story has you hooked, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The storm is only beginning. The night after receiving that chilling message, I barely slept. Every creak of the cottage floor, every rustle of leaves outside made my heart pound harder. But fear was not going to control me. I had spent a lifetime surviving worse storms than this. They thought they could scare me into giving back the money. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I got up before dawn, packed a few essentials, and left the cottage quietly. The first rays of sunlight spilled across the lake as I drove away, heading toward a safe place they could never find, an old friend's house in a neighboring town. Her name was Helen, a fiery woman my age who had once been my colleague at the bank. We had shared secrets, victories, and losses together, and if there was one person I could trust, it was her. When I arrived, Helen hugged me tight. "Margaret, what's going on? You look like you've been through a war." I told her everything, from the eviction attempt to the threats and the stalking. She listened quietly, her face growing more determined with every word. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "Now let's make sure they can't touch you." Helen and I spent the morning reviewing every legal document, every bank record, and every asset I owned. She reminded me of a safety deposit box we had once shared for emergency purposes. Inside it were copies of deeds, account information, and a letter from my late husband giving me full control of everything he had ever owned. I realized then that I was far stronger than they gave me credit for. I had weapons they couldn't see: knowledge, paperwork, and a network of loyal people. By midday, we were sitting in her kitchen, sipping tea, when the phone rang again. I picked it up, bracing myself. A male voice I didn't recognize spoke. "Mrs. Turner, you're making a mistake. Hand over the funds, and maybe we'll let this go." My heart skipped. "Who is this?" I demanded. The line clicked dead. "They're not just desperate," Helen said. "They're dangerous." I called my lawyer again, explaining the threats. He assured me that additional security measures were being put in place, including a restraining order against Michael and Jessica. But I knew paperwork wouldn't stop them if they were determined to hurt me. That's when Helen had an idea. "Why don't we turn their game against them? They're expecting you to hide, Margaret. Instead, you need to expose them." The plan started forming in my mind. I would not only protect myself, I would make sure the whole town knew exactly what kind of people Michael and Jessica really were. I reached out to a few old friends from the bank and from church. Word travels fast in small towns, and I wanted their betrayal to be known far and wide. While we were working on the plan, the police called. "Mrs. Turner, we've received a report of vandalism at your property," the officer said. My stomach clenched. "Which property?" I asked. "Your cottage by the lake," he replied. My blood ran cold. I knew it was them. Helen insisted we drive back with police escort. When we arrived, my heart broke. The windows were shattered, furniture overturned, walls spray-painted with insults like thief and traitor. On the floor was another note: "This is just the beginning." I stood there trembling, not from fear, but from fury. They had crossed the line. The police collected evidence and promised to investigate, but I knew this wasn't enough. I was done playing the victim. That night, I gathered every piece of evidence against them: financial fraud, loan defaults, even recordings of their threats. Helen helped me organize everything into a neat, powerful package. By the time we were done, we had enough to not only protect me legally but also to destroy any reputation they thought they had. The next day, I drove back to the city and marched straight into my lawyer's office. "It's time," I told him. He filed the final papers that not only froze any assets they might still access but also initiated foreclosure on the house they were clinging to. I wasn't just taking back what was mine. I was ensuring they paid for every tear they made me shed. Meanwhile, the tension grew. Jessica started calling me relentlessly, leaving voicemails dripping with venom. "You'll regret this, old witch. You can't take everything from us." Michael tried to play the guilt card. "Mom, please think about Emily. You're destroying our family." But I had already thought about Emily, and I realized she was becoming just like them. I needed to show her there were consequences for cruelty. Just as I was preparing to finalize everything, something unexpected happened. Emily called me, crying. "Grandma, sorry. I didn't know they were going to do all this. They're planning something worse. You have to be careful." Her voice shook with fear. "What do you mean, worse?" I asked. But before she could answer, the line went dead. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up, staring at the documents on the table, thinking about what Emily said. If they were planning something worse, I needed to be ready. I needed to strike first. I made one last call, to a private investigator I had worked with years ago during a bank fraud case. I told him everything and asked him to dig into Jessica's past, Michael's debts, and any hidden dealings they had. Within hours, he uncovered shocking information: illegal transactions, secret accounts, and ties to dangerous people. My own son had gotten involved with criminals to fund his lavish lifestyle, and Jessica was pulling the strings. The investigator warned me, "Mrs. Turner, they're not just greedy, they're reckless. If you don't act fast, they might do something you can't undo." The stage was set. The next move had to be mine, and it had to be big. As I sat there, pen in hand, signing the final set of documents that would completely strip them of any legal claim to my assets, I felt both fear and power surging through me. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky with fiery colors. I knew this was the calm before the storm. By the end of this fight, someone was going to be left with nothing, and it wasn't going to be me. The following day, everything erupted in a way that no one saw coming. What happened next would shake the entire town and reveal just how far a mother can go when her own flesh and blood turns against her. Stay tuned, because next chapter will show you exactly how I turned their own trap back on them. If this story has you gripping your seat, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because you won't believe what's coming. When I woke up the next morning, there was no hesitation in me anymore. The fear that had clung to my bones was gone, replaced by a cold, steady fire. They wanted war. They had it. I drove back into town with a folder so thick it could break their fragile lies in an instant. Inside that folder were the documents from the investigator, evidence of every illegal loan, every fraudulent signature, every dirty deal Michael and Jessica had been involved in. I first went to the local police station and handed over the evidence. The officer on duty, an old acquaintance of mine named Officer Daniels, looked at me with raised brows. "Margaret, this is heavy stuff. If what's here checks out, they'll be facing charges." "It will check out," I said firmly. "And I'm not stopping until the truth is out." After leaving the station, I made my way to the local bank where Michael and Jessica had been moving money around behind my back. The manager, an old trainee of mine, greeted me warmly. When I explained the situation, his face hardened. "Don't worry, Mrs. Turner. We'll freeze any illegal activity linked to those accounts immediately." By midday, I was ready for the final step: exposure. I called a meeting at the community center, inviting a few neighbors, friends, and even some reporters I knew from my years at the bank. Word spread fast, and soon the hall was full. As I stood before them, holding the folder, I took a deep breath. My family told me I was no longer part of them. I began, my voice steady. They tried to throw me out of my own home to take what was mine, and when they couldn't, they threatened my life. Gasps filled the room. But they forgot one thing: truth always wins. I opened the folder and laid out copies of the evidence for everyone to see. Pictures of falsified documents, screenshots of illegal transfers, records of threats. The room buzzed with murmurs as the truth unfolded. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. My once respected son and his conniving wife were now exposed for who they really were. As the crowd dispersed, people patted my shoulder, some even hugging me. "You're stronger than any of us knew," one woman whispered. I smiled, but inside I knew this was only the beginning. Public humiliation was one thing, but Michael and Jessica were desperate now. And desperate people can be dangerous. That night, as I returned to Helen's house, my phone rang again. This time it was Michael. His voice trembled with rage. "Mom, how could you do this to us? You've ruined everything. You're going to regret this." I stayed silent for a moment, then said, "No, Michael. I regret raising you to think you could treat people this way." Hung up. Moments later, Helen came rushing into the room, pale as a ghost. "Margaret," she said, holding up her phone. "Look at this." She showed me a message she had just received from an unknown number. "She won't make it to the end of the week." My heart raced. "They're serious," I whispered. Helen nodded. "Then we fight back harder." The following day, I hired private security to watch the cottage and Helen's house. I wasn't going to take any chances. Meanwhile, my lawyer informed me that the eviction order against Michael and Jessica was finalized. In 48 hours, they would have to leave the house they thought they had won. When the police served them the notice, witnesses said Jessica screamed like a banshee, throwing things while Michael begged the officers to give them more time. They were spiraling, and I watched from a distance, standing tall as they glared at me with hatred burning in their eyes. That night, I received a call from Emily again. She was sobbing. "Grandma, they're planning something crazy. Dad says if they can't have the money, no one can. He's talking about burning the house down." My stomach dropped. "Emily, where are you?" I asked urgently. She whispered, "I'm still here. I'll try to stop them, but please be careful." The line went dead. I alerted the police, who promised to keep an eye on the property. But I knew my son. He wouldn't stop. He was too far gone. That night, as rain poured down, I stayed awake by the window, watching the road, waiting for any sign of trouble. At exactly 2 a.m., I saw headlights approaching. My heart pounded as a car slowed down in front of Helen's house. I could barely make out the figures inside, but I knew who they were. Before I could call the police, the car sped off, tires screeching, leaving a threatening message spray-painted on the road. "You're next." Helen grabbed my hand. "Margaret, this isn't safe anymore. We need to leave." But I shook my head. "No, I'm done running. It's time to end this." The next morning, I prepared my final move. I arranged a meeting with my lawyer, the investigator, and the police. We drafted a plan to not only protect me but to corner Michael and Jessica once and for all. What they didn't know was that every step they took now was being recorded, every threat documented. By sunset, I received a call that changed everything. The investigator had found proof that Michael and Jessica were meeting with someone dangerous, someone willing to make me disappear for the right price. This was no longer just a family betrayal. This was criminal. The police set a trap, and I was ready to play my part. I agreed to meet Michael one last time at his request in a public place. He thought it would be his chance to intimidate me into submission. He had no idea that officers would be watching from every angle. When I walked into that cafe, Michael was already there, his eyes dark with rage. Jessica sat beside him, looking smug. "This is your last chance, Mom," he hissed. "Give us the money back." I leaned in, smiling coldly. "Michael, the last chance isn't mine. It's yours." Before they could react, police officers swarmed the cafe, placing them under arrest. The evidence was overwhelming. Illegal loans, fraud, attempted extortion, and now conspiracy to harm me. As they were dragged away, Jessica screamed, "You'll pay for this." Michael just stared at me, defeated. I stood there, watching as they were taken away, my heart heavy yet triumphant. This battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. They had underestimated me for the last time. But just as I stepped outside, feeling the cool evening breeze, I saw a familiar face in the crowd. "Emily." She ran up to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Grandma." They weren't working alone. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Yes," she whispered, trembling. "There's someone else behind all this, someone more dangerous than them." Who was pulling the strings? And what did they want from me? You won't believe the twist waiting in the next chapter. If this story has you on edge, like, comment and subscribe, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Emily's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Someone else behind all this. My chest tightened as I looked into her frightened eyes. "Emily, who is it?" I pressed, gripping her shoulders gently. She shook her head, trembling. "I don't know everything, Grandma. But Dad mentioned a man named Carter. He said Carter owns the debts and was the one who gave them money to make things happen. He's dangerous." They were terrified of him. Carter. The name alone sent a chill through me. I had heard whispers about a Carter years ago when I still worked at the bank. Someone who hid behind legitimate businesses while running a web of illegal operations. If Michael had tangled himself with him, that explained why everything escalated so quickly. This was no longer just family drama. It was a trap with strings reaching far beyond what I could see. I pulled Emily close and said softly, "You need to stay with me now. You're not safe with them or anyone connected to this man." She nodded through her tears. That night, I took her back to Helen's house, where we kept the lights low and doors locked. Helen, ever the fighter, said, "If this Carter is who I think he is, you need to be 2 steps ahead. The police can't always protect you against men like that." She was right. I called the investigator again and gave him one name to trace: Carter. The next morning we met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. He slid a thick envelope across the table. "Margaret, you were right to be cautious. Carter is worse than you think. He's connected to underground loan sharks and has a record of making people vanish when they cross him. Michael and Jessica owed him hundreds of thousands. When you closed those accounts, you cut off his money supply." I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. "So now he's after me to recover his losses," I said bitterly. "Exactly," the investigator confirmed. "But here's the good news: he's sloppy. We have proof tying him to money laundering. If we can get him on tape threatening you, we'll have enough to bring him down." The thought of facing this man terrified me, but I wasn't going to let fear rule me. "Set it up," I said firmly. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a smooth but menacing voice said, "Mrs. Turner, you've caused me a lot of trouble. Let's meet tomorrow, noon. The old train station." My heart pounded. "And if I don't?" "Yes." He chuckled darkly. "Then I'll come to you." After he hung up, I sat there trembling. This was the moment everything had been leading up to. I called the investigator and we arranged a plan with the police. They would be nearby, hidden, waiting for Carter to incriminate himself. Emily wanted to come, but I refused. "You've done enough, sweetheart. I need you safe." The next day, I arrived at the abandoned train station. The air smelled of rust and decay, and every step echoed through the empty space. My heart thudded in my chest, but I walked with my head held high. From the shadows, a tall man emerged. He was dressed in a dark coat, his eyes cold and calculating. "You must be Margaret," he said, almost amused. "I see why they feared you." "You've been using my son," I said, my voice firm. "He made his mistakes, but this ends now." He smirked. "You think you can end this? You closed the accounts, and now you owe me. Give me back what you took, or you'll regret it." I stood still, every nerve screaming at me to run, but I didn't move. "You won't get a dime from me," I said. "And soon you'll have bigger problems than an old woman." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a growl. "You're brave but foolish. You have one day to return my money, or you'll wish you were dead." Those words were enough. The tiny microphone hidden under my scarf picked up every threat, and the police moved in swiftly. Sirens blared as officers surrounded the station, weapons drawn. Carter turned to run, but it was too late. They tackled him to the ground and slapped handcuffs on his wrists. He shouted curses as they dragged him away, his power crumbling before my eyes. The investigator approached me, relief flooding his face. "You did it, Margaret. We got him." But even as Carter was taken away, I knew this wasn't the end. People like him had networks, and networks don't die easily. I returned to Helen's house with Emily, thinking maybe, just maybe, peace was finally within reach. That night, as I sat by the fire, Emily handed me a folded piece of paper she found in her bag. My blood turned cold as I read it. "You may have stopped Carter, but the game isn't over. We're still watching." I stared into the flames, realizing this war was far from won. Someone else was still pulling strings, and they were coming for me. The next chapter would test me in ways I never imagined. The battle was about to escalate beyond anything I had faced before. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where the fight takes a shocking turn and secrets long buried finally rise to the surface. If this story has your heart pounding, like, comment and subscribe, because the storm isn't over yet. The note burned in my hand as I stared at the fire. My entire body was trembling, not from fear this time but from anger. How many more shadows are out there? Thought. I had taken down my son, his wife and Carter, yet there was still someone lurking, someone who thought they could scare me into surrender. They were wrong. Emily sat beside me, her hands clutching the edge of her sweater. Grandma, maybe we should leave. Go somewhere far away. They won't find us if we disappear. I took her hand gently. Running has never been my way, sweetheart. We stand our ground. That night I didn't sleep. I went over every piece of evidence, every name that had come up in the investigators' reports. And then I found it. One name, mentioned in passing, connected to Carter's money laundering ring. Richard Bellamy. A wealthy businessman, respected in public, but behind closed doors he was the one financing Carter's operations. He had deep pockets and deeper connections. If Carter was gone, Bellamy would be furious, and I was his new target. At sunrise I called the investigator. "Find me everything you can on Bellamy," I said. Within hours, he returned with a file that made my stomach twist. Bellamy wasn't just rich. He owned properties across town, had politicians in his pocket, and had a reputation for making problems disappear. The worst part. He had been a silent partner in some of the trust's investments years ago. My family's financial ties had accidentally tangled with his business. When I closed the accounts, I didn't just hurt Carter. I hit Bellamy where it hurt. I knew what I had to do. Expose Bellamy. But taking down a man like him wasn't easy. Helen tried to talk me out of it. "Margaret, this isn't just family drama anymore. This is dangerous." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Helen, I've come too far to stop now." Meanwhile, Michael and Jessica's trial was underway. Their crimes were all over the news, and every time they appeared in court, they looked more broken than before. But that didn't stop the threats. One morning I found my car door scratched with the words, "Pay back or pay blood." I alerted the police again, but they were stretched thin. The investigator suggested we lay low while gathering more evidence. Instead, I made a bold move. I attended a charity gala that Bellamy was hosting, dressed in my finest gown, walking in as if I belonged there. People whispered as I entered, surprised to see me. Bellamy noticed me almost immediately. He approached with a polished smile. "Mrs. Turner, what a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I looked him in the eye. "You know exactly why I'm here," I said calmly. His smile faded. "You've stirred up a lot of trouble, old woman," he said under his breath. "Carter was just a pawn. You've crossed the wrong man." I leaned in close and whispered, "And you've underestimated the wrong woman." At that moment, hidden cameras, placed by the investigator, were recording every word. Bellamy didn't realize he was sealing his own fate with every threat he made that night. He grabbed my arm tightly. "If you don't stop this crusade, you won't live to see the next sunrise." I pulled my arm free and walked away, my heart pounding. The investigator slipped out with the footage, and I left the gala knowing Bellamy's mask was about to fall. The following morning, the footage aired on the local news. Bellamy's threats were broadcasted for the entire town to hear. Authorities moved fast, launching an investigation into his dealings. Within hours, his assets were frozen, and his associates scattered like rats. But Bellamy was not a man who went down quietly. That night, as Emily and I sat in Helen's house, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. My heart stopped. We heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. Helen grabbed a flashlight while I held Emily close. A shadow moved past the window. Then a voice from the darkness. "You think this is over, Margaret? It's only just beginning." Before I could react, the back door creaked open. Someone was inside the house. I whispered to Emily, "Hide." She scrambled under the table while I stood my ground, my breath shaking. Helen held up the flashlight, revealing a masked man in the doorway. He stepped forward, holding something metallic that glinted in the dim light. But before he could reach me, sirens wailed outside. Police lights flashed through the windows, and the masked man bolted into the night. Officers stormed the house, but he was gone. The chief officer grabbed my hand. "Mrs. Turner, we need to relocate you under protection. Bellamy still has loyal men." As they escorted us to safety, I looked back at the house, knowing this wasn't over. Bellamy was cornered, but a cornered man is the most dangerous of all. And I knew the final showdown was coming soon. One way or another, this would end. Stay with me because the next chapter will take you to the breaking point where everything explodes. If you're holding your breath, like, comment and subscribe, because the climax is near and it will leave you stunned. They moved us to a safe house on the edge of town, a small cabin surrounded by thick woods. 2 police officers were stationed outside, and cameras were set up at every entrance. Still, the air felt heavy with danger, as if Bellamy's shadow was creeping in through every crack. Emily clung to me that night, whispering, "Grandma, what if they find us here?" I stroked her hair and said softly, "Then they'll regret stepping foot through that door." The next morning, the investigator arrived with news. "Margaret," he said, "Bellamy is unraveling. The authorities are closing in, but he's desperate. He's trying to flee the country. We have one chance to trap him today." My heart pounded. "How?" "Yes. We need you to lure him into making one last mistake. Meet him on his terms, but under our control." It was a dangerous plan, but I agreed. This had to end. The meeting was arranged at an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Police and federal agents would be hidden nearby, ready to move when Bellamy incriminated himself. As I prepared to leave, Emily grabbed my hand. "Please don't go." I kissed her forehead. "I have to, sweetheart. This ends tonight." The drive to the warehouse was tense. Rain lashed against the windshield, and thunder rumbled in the distance. When I arrived, the building loomed like a dark giant, its windows shattered, the air filled with the smell of salt and rust. I stepped inside, my heels clicking on the wet concrete, my breath sharp and steady. Bellamy stood in the center of the room, flanked by 2 menacing guards. His tailored suit was drenched, but his cold smile never wavered. "Mrs. Turner," he said mockingly, "you really are fearless. Or foolish." I stood tall. "You've lost, Bellamy. Everything you built is crumbling." He laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "You think freezing my accounts and exposing me on TV is enough? I built this city's underground. Can rebuild. But you," he stepped closer, "you can be erased with one phone call." I kept my voice calm, though my heart raced. "The world is watching you, Bellamy. Every step you take is recorded now." He sneered. "You're bluffing." At that moment, I gave the signal by adjusting my scarf. Hidden microphones and cameras recorded every word. The police were listening. Bellamy didn't know he was already in his own trap. He leaned closer, his voice low and threatening. "You have one last chance to give me back what you took. Refuse, and no one will ever find your body." Suddenly, headlights blazed through the broken windows and a loud voice echoed. "Police! Drop your weapons!" Chaos erupted. Bellamy's guards pulled out guns, and officers swarmed the warehouse. Shots rang out, echoing through the metal walls. I ducked behind a crate as agents tackled the guards. Bellamy tried to run, but an officer blocked his path, forcing him to the ground. They cuffed him as he spat venomous words. "You'll regret this, old woman. This isn't the end." But I stood and faced him, my voice steady. "Oh, Bellamy, it is the end. For you." As they dragged him away, I felt my knees weaken. The investigator rushed to my side. "It's over, Margaret. You did it." I took a deep breath, the tension finally breaking. But in my heart, I knew something still lingered. Power like Bellamy's doesn't just vanish. There were still pieces of his empire left out there, and someone would try to claim them. We returned to the safe house that night. Emily hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. "It's over, Grandma," she asked. I kissed her cheek. "Almost, sweetheart. Almost. But as I settled into bed, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting a message from the police, but it was an unknown number. My blood froze as I read the text. Bellamy may be gone, but his empire is mine now. Sleep well, Margaret. You're still on my list. My breath caught in my throat. Another enemy had risen from the ashes. Someone even more dangerous than Bellamy. And they weren't hiding anymore. The war wasn't over, it had just changed hands. What happened next would bring everything to a head in ways I never imagined. The battle for my life, my legacy, and my family was about to reach its breaking point. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where the stakes climb higher than ever, and the final twist begins to unfold. If this story has your heart racing, like, comment and subscribe, because the last 2 chapters will leave you speechless. The message on my phone was like a dagger to the heart. Bellamy may be gone, but his empire is mine now. My hands shook as I read it again and again. Who was this new enemy? What did they want from me? And how much power did they have? I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every shadow stretched too far. By morning, I knew I couldn't sit still waiting for them to strike. I had to take control again. The investigator arrived early, coffee in hand, his face grim. Margaret, this new player isn't just another thug. From the intel we've gathered, it's someone high up in Bellamy's organization. Someone who stayed hidden while he took all the heat. They call themselves the broker. No real name, no pictures, just whispers. Whoever they are, they're pulling the strings now. Helen crossed her arms. So what's the plan? Wait until they show up at the door. I shook my head. No. We drag them out. We make them come to us. The investigator raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous. I looked him straight in the eye. Everything about this has been dangerous. But they want something, they want me scared. I'll give them the opposite. I'll make them afraid. We began planting false information through channels we knew they monitored. Rumors that I still controlled millions of dollars, that I was planning to move it overseas. It was bait and we all knew it. The broker wouldn't ignore that kind of temptation. For days nothing happened. Emily and I stayed in the safe house, the silence pressing down on us like a weight. Just when I thought maybe our plan failed, the trap snapped. At 3 a.m., the security cameras outside the safe house picked up movement. 3 black SUVs circling the area. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Tonight it ends. The police were alerted instantly, but these people were professionals. The power was cut, cameras went dead, and before we knew it, the house was under siege. Officers outside returned fire as masked men tried to break in. I pulled Emily close, hiding her in a closet while I stood in the hallway with Helen, both of us clutching whatever we could for protection. Gunshots echoed, shattering windows. Then a voice boomed through the darkness. Margaret! Come out now, and we'll let the others live. Froze. My heart raced. They were here for me, and they didn't care who they had to hurt to get to me. I stepped forward, shouting back, You'll have to come and take me. Just as they breached the door, a flood of police backup arrived. Special units the investigator had secretly called earlier. Chaos erupted. Flashbangs lit up the night, men screamed. Officers tackled intruders to the ground. Amid the chaos, I caught sight of a figure standing back, watching calmly. A woman, tall, composed, her face partially hidden by a hood. Our eyes locked for a moment. She smirked. Then she slipped away into the trees, disappearing before anyone could catch her. When the dust settled, several of her men were arrested, but she was gone. The investigator confirmed what I already knew. That was the broker, he said. And she's more dangerous than Bellamy ever was. In the aftermath, the authorities insisted on moving me and Emily again, but I refused. I was tired of running. No, I told them. This ends here. She wants a war. Then I'll finish it. Over the next days, I worked with the investigator and law enforcement to set up a final sting. We traced her network, freezing accounts, intercepting shipments, cutting her power piece by piece. Each move made her more desperate, and that's when she made her mistake. She arranged a meeting with one of her top men to secure what she thought was the last stash of Bellamy's fortune. She didn't know the meeting was a setup. The night of the operation, I insisted on being there. The officers didn't like it, but I told them, "This is my fight." The meeting was in an abandoned hotel on the outskirts of town. I walked in first, my heart pounding, and there she was, waiting, confident as ever. "So you're the old woman who thinks she can destroy me," she said, stepping closer. "You took Bellamy from me. You cost me millions. Tell me, Margaret, do you really think you'll leave here alive?" I looked her in the eye and whispered, "You'll find out." Right then, the hidden cameras went live, the police stormed in, and her entire network collapsed in one swift blow. The broker fought like a cornered animal, but there was nowhere left to run. They dragged her away screaming threats. "This isn't over. You'll never be safe." As the sirens faded, I finally exhaled. The war was ending. Or so I thought. The following morning, I received a letter hand-delivered to the safe house. No sender. Inside, just one sentence written in elegant handwriting. "You've won this battle, Margaret, but the game isn't over until Chapter 10. My hands trembled as I folded the letter. The final confrontation was coming, and it would decide everything. My life, my family's future, and the legacy they tried to steal. Brace yourself, because the next chapter is where everything ends, one way or another. If you've stayed with me this far, like, comment and subscribe, because the final chapter will leave you breathless. The morning after the letter arrived, the air felt different, heavier, as if the world itself knew the end was near. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the single sentence over and over. The game isn't over until Chapter 10. It was taunting me, daring me to take the final step. Helen placed a hand on my shoulder. "Margaret, this is the last move. Whatever she's planning, you need to be ready." "I've been ready since the day they told me I wasn't family anymore," I said, my voice trembling but strong. The investigator arrived shortly after, carrying a folder. "We've tracked the broker's remaining activity. She's consolidating her power for one last strike. Tonight, she's meeting her remaining allies at an old airstrip outside town to escape with the last of her assets. This is it, Margaret. If we take her down tonight, it's over." I agreed to go, against everyone's advice. This fight started with me, and it had to end with me. Emily begged me not to go. "Grandma, what if something happens to you?" I hugged her tight. "If I don't face her now, something will always happen to me, and to you. I won't let that happen." Night fell like a curtain, and we drove out to the airstrip under a moonless sky. The place was eerily silent except for the distant hum of an aircraft being prepared. Officers and agents were hidden all around, waiting for my signal. I stepped out, my feet crunching on gravel, my breath cold in the night air. Then she appeared, the broker. No mask this time, no hood. She was tall, striking, her face sharp as a blade. She smiled, slow and dangerous. "You came," she said, her voice dripping with mock admiration. "The woman who toppled empires. Tell me, Margaret, are you here to beg or to die?" I stepped forward, standing my ground. "I'm here to end this. You've lost. The police have everything, your accounts, your men, your secrets. There's nowhere left to run." She laughed, a chilling sound. "You think you've won. Even if you kill me, there will always be another. Power doesn't die, it changes hands." I held her gaze. "Maybe. But tonight your hands lose it." That moment I gave the signal. Lights blazed, sirens screamed, and agents stormed the airstrip. The broker pulled out a gun, aiming it straight at me. My heart froze, but I didn't move. A shot rang out, then another. I fell to my knees, but it wasn't my blood. The broker collapsed, screaming, as officers wrestled the weapon from her hand. She had been hit in the shoulder, alive but captured. As they cuffed her, she spat at me. "You'll never be free, Margaret. You've made enemies you can't even see." I stepped closer, looking down at her. "Maybe so. But I've faced worse than you. And I'm still here." With the broker taken into custody, her network crumbled overnight. The authorities dismantled the remaining operations, and the threats stopped coming. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. Weeks later, I stood outside my old house, the one Michael and Jessica had tried to take from me. It was mine again, legally and fully. Michael and Jessica were serving their sentences, paying for every lie and betrayal. Emily, now living with me, slowly rebuilt her life, learning what loyalty truly meant. One evening as the sun set, she sat beside me on the porch. "Grandma, after everything, do you forgive them?" I looked out at the horizon and said, "Forgiveness isn't for them, sweetheart. It's for me. I won by surviving, by standing tall, and by protecting what's mine." We sat there in silence, watching the sky turn gold. I realized then that the real victory wasn't in closing their bank accounts or defeating powerful criminals. It was in never letting them break me. I smiled, remembering the first night they told me I wasn't family anymore. They thought they had destroyed me. But in the end, I reclaimed everything. My home, my dignity, my peace. This was my story, and it ended on my terms. To everyone listening, remember this. Never let anyone decide your worth. Stand up for yourself, fight for what's yours, and never ever underestimate the quiet strength of an old woman. If this story moved you, like, comment and subscribe, because every voice matters, and yours can inspire someone else to never give up.